All right, breaking just moments ago, we just learned the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General has opened an investigation into how the Secret Service secured the campaign rally where there was an attempt on Donald Trump's life. The FBI also investigating the incident. CNN also has an exclusive interview with the Secret Service director. CNN's Whitney Wild's been on top of all of this, joins us now. Good morning, Whitney.
Good morning, John. This is a notable development in what will be a long list of investigations as the Secret Service answering more questions today. When you said that local law enforcement was responsible for that building, what did you mean by that?
So Secret Service respects local law enforcement, and we could not do our job either investigatively or on our protective mission without them. In Pennsylvania, in fact, on that same day, they were also working the First Lady trip and a vice presidential trip. So I understand the constraints that they're under, and as I said earlier, we couldn't do our job without them. At that particular site, we divided up areas of responsibility, but the Secret Service is solely responsible for the design and the implementation and the execution of the site. And that's what I was trying to stress, was that we just divided up areas of responsibility, and they provided support to those areas of responsibility.
And you mentioned the First Lady's also event in Pittsburgh. You guys have a lot of areas to cover. Were any assets diverted from the former president's rally to her detail?
No, there were no assets from the Secret Service that were diverted at all.
Okay, so no one swapped out at any of the posts, for example?
No.
Okay. CNN, of course, has reporting that the Secret Service increased security for former President Trump because of a credible threat from Iran. I've spoken with several people who look at the perimeter, hearing that news, look at the perimeter and say, how, knowing that there was a credible threat against the former president, how could that perimeter be so small that it excluded a building just 150 yards away from the podium?
I can't get into the specifics of any threats, but obviously with all of our protectees, we're constantly monitoring the threats that are out there, and we design our security plan based on that, also depending on the venue and the environment that we're in. And on that particular day, a full advance had been completed, but this is also why we are doing an internal review, and we look forward to the external review as well. And obviously, if there are things that we need to change about our policies or our procedures or our methods, we are certainly going to do so.
Was that perimeter too small?
The perimeter encompassed the area that we needed to secure for the event that we had on that day. What happened is a terrible incident and should never happen, and we are obviously going to make sure that moving forward, we take whatever lessons that come out of this and adjust accordingly.
Was every element, every part of his, from the intelligence to the counter-assault team, to the detail agents, to the shift agents, I mean every element, top to bottom, of the advance in the operation, was every element increased after you learned of this credible threat?
What we increased was what we felt was appropriate for the former president and for that particular event on that day. We have been increasing the assets and the resources and the staffing that we have been providing to the former president since he was a presidential candidate and then the presumptive nominee. That's what I can tell you.
That sounds like a no.
I am not saying a no at all. I'm saying that we have continued to increase the resources that we've been providing to the former president.
Director Cheatle told us that she did speak with the agents and officers who responded, telling them that in what would be the most difficult moment for any Secret Service agent or officer's career, in that moment, those men and women who were there on scene did their job flawlessly. Back to you.
Yeah, well, we'll find out with this Inspector General report and the number of investigations that now seem to be ongoing. Whitney Wild, great reporting. Thank you very much. Sarah?
Again, we are following this breaking news where the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General has opened an investigation into how the Secret Service secured the Trump campaign rally. But we're also learning of more threats. CNN national security analyst and former director of the National Intelligence, James Clapper, is joining me right now. Thank you, sir, for joining us this morning. Mr. Clapper, what are the things that law enforcement is learning that would trigger this kind of warning? That there is a much more heightened threat during these very volatile campaign times?
Well, to begin with is of course, the Iranian threat, although we don't know any details about the vintage, the reliability, validity of the human source in question. Was it corroborated? I think now the concern is, will there be copycat attempts in sort of retaliation against the attempt against former President Trump? So this would I think, infer a potential heightened threat to the president and others in the administration, as you have copycats or those who feel that they have to retaliate for the attempt against President Trump. So this, by however you measure it, represents a growing threat.
I am curious to see if that is ginned up by what we're seeing online with the blaming of Democrats, which there's no evidence at all of that. The person who did this attempted assassination was a registered Republican. But you're hearing on the stage as well from some of the Republican leaders using the word they cannot take him out. They tried to kill him, inferring that it's the Democrats. Is this something that would create an even more heightened threat because of what leaders are also saying?
Well, yes, it would. That's why it would really be good if everyone would abide by the appeals made by both President Biden and former President Trump to tone down the rhetoric, to cool it. And so, given the nature of polarization in this country and the wild conspiracies on social media, that sort of rhetoric just feeds that, and I think heightens the intensity of resentment on the part of some to retaliate because of blaming the Democrats, for example, which right now is not helpful.
You know, over the years, there have been so many assassination attempts and assassinations in our past political history, especially in the 60s. You had, President Kennedy, Dr. King, Bobby Kennedy. When you look at what happens during a volatile campaign, do you always see these threats go up?
Well, not like this case. We've certainly had, unfortunately, a very checkered history with political violence in this country. When we had the incident that happened Saturday, it certainly brought back very vivid memories of mine when President Kennedy was assassinated in November 1963. I was a young lieutenant then in the Air Force in Texas, not far from Dallas. And I had many of the same feelings and emotions that came up when I witnessed what happened Saturday. The difference, though, Sarah, is we were united completely in grief in 1963, and that is not the case now. And of course, there have been other instances since then of political violence. George Wallace, Bobby Kennedy, and other similar incidents involving violence. And that's why today, because of the polarization in this country and the intense feelings that people have, why this is a particularly volatile situation.